Imagine being 25 years old, armed with a hard-earned degree, dreams of a future in science, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, the people who raised you might recognize your worth at last, but instead of support or patience, you find yourself on a scorching driveway, gravel cutting into your knees, your father's hand clamped like a vice around your wrist as though you are not his child, but an object to be dragged, humiliated, and discarded. The sun above burns, but all you feel is the ice of betrayal, because cruelty within a family carries a chill that no warmth can thaw. This isn't a story about youthful rebellion or petty disagreements. This is a story about how some households turn love into a battlefield where one child is crowned the golden heir while another is ground into the dirt. The driveway scene becomes a symbol not of a single outburst but of years of imbalance, favoritism, and abuse disguised as discipline. When her sister complains that her car is blocked, her father doesn't pause to ask questions, doesn't give his daughter the dignity of explanation. Instead, he erupts instantly, dragging her across the stones, shoving her into the trash as if to prove her sister's convenience mattered more than her humanity. And while this might sound extraordinary in its cruelty, what it reflects is a common but often hidden truth within toxic families. The scapegoated child's existence is treated as an inconvenience, their needs always secondary, their dignity always negotiable. Her mother stands idly sipping iced tea, not shocked, not intervening, but complicit, even joining in the mockery, with a line meant to reduce her daughter to nothing more than garbage. This moment is where humiliation shifts from private to public, filmed on a phone by the favored sister, turned into entertainment rather than an act of violence. And if we pause here to analyze, we see how humiliation functions in abusive systems. It erodes self-image, isolates the victim, and conditions them to believe escape is impossible. Yet the paradox of humiliation is that at its lowest point, it often plants the seed of resistance. Because when you have been dragged across gravel, when your own family has equated your existence with trash, what else is left to fear? So while the driveway scene marks one of the cruelest moments of her life, it also becomes the first moment where survival is no longer just about enduring. It becomes about deciding to rewrite the script that was forced upon her, and that decision, though faint and fragile at first, will grow into a force her family never anticipated. That night, instead of comfort or apology, she finds herself alone in the basement, a single buzzing light bulb overhead casting harsh shadows, the smell of trash still clinging to her skin, her hands trembling, but not from weakness, from the quiet rage boiling under the surface. Because this is what abuse often does. It pushes you past the point of tears into a silence that feels like stone. Her mother knocks not with concern, but with contempt, reminding her that she's nothing more than a burden, labeling her elite, declaring her degree meaningless compared to her sister's supposed brilliance. And if we stop here to reflect, we see how language in toxic families becomes as cutting as fists. Every insult is a tool to chip away at identity. Every dismissal, a reminder that in their hierarchy she has no place. The next morning, her worst fears materialize. She wakes to find her family gone on a trip with her sister. A note on the fridge coldly instructing her not to mess up the house, as though she were not a daughter but an unwanted tenant. And when her phone buzzes with messages, she discovers they have taken even more from her. Her suitcase gone, her laptop, her ID, her notes, everything that tethered her to the future she was trying to build. Her father's voice over the line is flat and merciless, telling her they've left her belongings at a homeless shelter miles away, as though abandonment is not just punishment but entertainment. And here is where the cruelty of toxic families becomes crystal clear. They don't simply neglect, they actively sabotage, removing resources, stripping dignity, ensuring dependence. Because power to them is measured not in love, but in how thoroughly they can reduce someone. The irony is that they believe they've ended her by discarding her like waste. But what they fail to see is that rock bottom has a way of forging resilience. The neighbor who greets her at her lowest moment sees in her what her parents never did: potential, intellect, and grit, offering her a contact that will change the trajectory of her life. And this moment matters because it illustrates another vital truth: abuse isolates, but survival often begins with a single act of kindness. One person who affirms your worth can outweigh years of degradation. When she takes the business card in her hand, the insult of being called trash begins to shift into the possibility of being transformed. Because broken wood can be restored, discarded material can be remade, and so can people. Her family thinks they've abandoned her to nothingness, but what they've actually done is give her the first chance to define herself. Outside their cruelty, and in that decision to move forward with purpose instead of despair, lies the seed of her eventual transformation. The shop smells of sawdust and varnish, not of home, but of possibility. She begins at the bottom, sweeping floors, sanding wood until her fingers ache, hauling furniture that feels heavier than her body. Yet unlike her father's cruelty, this weight is honest. It demands strength but doesn't demean, and that difference matters. Because for the first time in years, she is working hard not to prove herself to people who despise her, but to learn, to grow, to build. Malik, the shop owner, watches quietly, never praising excessively, never mocking, simply observing. And when he finally nods at her work on a reupholstered bench and says, "You've got grit," those 3 words strike deeper than any insult her family hurled, because encouragement, however small, can shatter the echoes of cruelty. Here we see the psychology of recovery after prolonged abuse. Survivors don't need grand gestures. They need consistency. They need to be reminded that effort can be recognized without ridicule, that failure is not fatal, and that improvement is possible. She uses every small stipend not on luxury, but survival: a thrift store shirt, a burner phone, a cot in the back room. Each choice proving resilience is not glamorous. It is persistence, and every night she reads, studying design, wood stains, carpentry techniques as if her very life depends on it, because in truth it does. By the 3rd month, Malik entrusts her with her first client, a widow who brings in her late husband's desk, scarred and dulled by years, and when she returns it gleaming, polished, alive again, the woman weeps, whispering that she hasn't seen it shine since her wedding. And that moment becomes a turning point, because restoration is no longer just work. It is metaphor, proof that what is broken can be remade. What is discarded can be beautiful again. And she realizes she is not simply surviving. She is beginning to thrive. Yet what makes this powerful is not just her progress, but the silence from her family. Not once do they call. Not once do they ask if she is alive. They have written her off as though she is a failed experiment. But in doing so, they have freed her from their narrative. And this is where her transformation begins to take root. She is no longer defined by their disdain, but by her own creation. And while she hasn't yet faced them, the foundation of her revenge is being laid not with anger, but with wood, stain, and grit. Time passes in the rhythm of sandpaper strokes and hammer strikes, her body hardening with labor, her mind sharpening with knowledge, and with every project her confidence grows. She is no longer the discarded daughter hiding in a basement. She is Rue Hart, a name she gives herself deliberately, shedding the one tied to abuse like old skin. This act of renaming is more than symbolic. It is the reclamation of identity, because survivors often need to reforge not just their careers, but their very sense of self. By year 2, she is no longer simply an apprentice in Malik's shop. She is running her own small online store, showcasing reclaimed furniture and bespoke designs. Her pieces find homes across the state in the houses of interior designers, stagers, even television set decorators. Each sale not just income, but a validation that her work has worth, that she has worth. And with every commission, the gulf between who her parents declared her to be and who she actually is widens. Then one day fate delivers irony wrapped neatly. In an email, an inquiry arrives from her mother, though the woman has no idea who she is writing to, requesting a custom dining table for a real estate gala her sister is hosting. In the very backyard where she once was humiliated, this moment is not just narrative symmetry. It is poetic justice, because abusers who discard often circle back when they need, never realizing the person they belittled has grown too strong to be used again. Rue accepts the job, not to serve them, but to craft her revenge with subtlety. She quotes double her usual rate. They accept without hesitation, proving their arrogance remains intact. And when the table is delivered, she does not attend, but she ensures her presence is carved into the wood itself, etching along the underside a hidden message: dead weight floats when you're made of stone, and leaving a letter beneath the glass centerpiece reminding them that the driveway they once dragged her across became her launching point. This act is layered with brilliance, because it is not rage shouted into the void. It is truth quietly embedded into art. Truth that they cannot erase without destroying the very thing they paid for. Her family's reaction is chaos. Her sister fainting, her mother locking herself in a room, her father storming out in humiliation. And here the analysis deepens. Revenge in its most powerful form is not destruction, it is exposure, making the abuser face what they did. Not by lowering yourself to their cruelty, but by holding up a mirror they cannot look away from. And in that moment, she has achieved something her family never believed possible. She has eclipsed them. The winter arrives with an envelope, unmarked, thin. Inside a photo of her childhood home now stripped of pride. Foreclosure pending scrawled in cold print. And in that moment, the altar, where she was sacrificed for her family's image, is reduced to nothing more than a property to be auctioned. This is poetic in its starkness, because the house that once represented their power now exposes their weakness. Malik asks her gently whether she will help them, but she knows help was never part of their language. They did not help when she bled on the driveway, when they stole her belongings, when they left her with nothing. And so her answer is calm. No, she will not help, but she will act, not to save them, but to reclaim the space. She arranges for a kind young couple she once helped to purchase the house at auction, ensuring that the walls which once echoed with cruelty will now house laughter and new life. And here we see the deepest layer of her revenge. It is not about destruction, but transformation. Turning a site of trauma into a sanctuary for others, but she is not yet finished. 2 weeks later, she prints invitations on fine cardstock, delivering them by hand to her parents and sister. The words "open house celebration, a new beginning" for 27 Birchwood Drive gleam in embossed ink. And when they arrive, dressed as though expecting reconciliation or opportunity, they are instead confronted with a sign planted firmly in the lawn. This home was rebuilt with grace, not guilt. The young couple greets them warmly, cradling their baby, introducing themselves as the new family who will make memories here. And then they point to Rue across the street, not in finery, but in overalls. Gloves still stained from work, clipboard in hand. A figure no longer seeking their approval, but embodying her freedom. Her father sputters in disbelief. Her mother blinks as though waking from a dream. Her sister flushes crimson with rage, but Rue speaks with steady composure, reminding them of the driveway, of the trash can, of the gravel, and of how she has repurposed their cruelty into her liberation. Her words are not shouted. They are spoken like chisels carving truth into stone. When you threw me away, I learned How to build when you drag me across the driveway. You laid the foundation for everything I've created. Her final gift is a small wooden box. Simple but polished. Inside a crushed soda can, a photo of her bruised younger self, and a note that reads, "You taught me what worthlessness looks like, so I gave it back." She does not linger to watch their reactions. She turns and walks away, leaving them with the remnants of the past they created. And here lies the true brilliance. Her revenge is not only their humiliation, but her refusal to be chained to them anymore. Because the final stage of healing is not just exposing cruelty, it is walking away from it. Her family may stew in anger, confusion, or denial, but none of it matters because their laughter, once the weapon, has gone silent, replaced by the sound of her own steady footsteps toward a future they cannot touch. In the silence that follows her final act, she no longer feels the weight of gravel under her knees or the sting of being shoved into a trash can. What she carries instead is clarity, because revenge, at its highest form, is not screaming louder than those who mocked you. It is living in such a way that their cruelty becomes irrelevant. Her parents and sister will always remember the open house, the sign on the lawn, the wooden box with its quiet indictment. But she will remember something else the moment she realized that her worth was never theirs to define. It was hers to reclaim. And here is where the lesson expands. Because stories like this are not only about one family's cruelty. They are about every cycle of abuse. Every scapegoated child who has been told they are less. Every sibling who has been forced to carry the shadow of favoritism. Every young adult discarded when they could not serve a parent's ego. Rue's journey demonstrates something vital. That survival is not only about leaving, but about building skills, building identity, building a name that is not tied to the voices that tried to destroy you. Her transformation from a discarded daughter to a respected craftswoman mirrors the process of restoration itself. Broken wood made beautiful again. And the insight here is profound healing is rarely about erasing scars. It is about turning them into grain, marks that make the finished piece unique, stronger, irreplaceable. And while her family's downfall might look like the climax, the true ending is not their silence. It is her freedom. She is free to create, to work with her hands, to live by her own name, to give value where she chooses, and to deny it where it was once stolen. The final takeaway is this: cruelty may strip you, drag you, discard you, but it cannot define you unless you let it. Strength is not the absence of scars. It is the decision to rise despite them. And in the end, her story is not just one of revenge, but of rebirth, a reminder that even from brokenness, beauty can be made. And even from betrayal, a future can be carved. Because when you stop waiting for them to laugh with you, you realize you no longer need their laughter at all.